today's modern society, we have placed education spending on the back burner and instead have placed more emphasis on other things. In doing so, we have neglected students' education and also not given teachers the salary they deserve.
The government spends enough on education. It's just where the funds are put. Like, we spent $1 million on our roof when any contractor could have done it for much less. It makes no sense that we spent so much money there. Plus, not to mention that, personal opinion, that the money that we do receive is being embezzled by the higher ups. But just my opinion.
Yes, because also through research, California is the one with the highest amount of graduates.
Well, considering that the federal money is actually only generally 9 to 12%, when we're actually supposed to get 18%, especially for programs like special education, it's kind of sad. And the fact that California is only at a 3%, that's probably because that's all we end up getting from the federal government. Typically, like special ed and special programs are an encroachment on the general fund. They're an encroachment on the general fund as it is, and then even though the federal government's supposed to pay their percentage, they only ever give between a 3 to 9%. The reason why well, it's not just California, it's actually all states. All states actually, in special programs that are federally funded, they actually have problems with that as well. So it's not just California. Basically what it comes down to is that education is actually supposed to be state run. So especially now with the new administration in Washington, D.C., they're fighting the whole fact that the federal should be supplying money for education while it's a state funded program. prisoners are actually in prison longer than students are in school. Also, too, there's actually studies that show that if a student is unsuccessful at the 3rd grade, whether it's reading, primarily in reading and English, but also in math, they have a higher tendency to actually end up in jail. The worse a student does in school, and actually if they become a dropout, they're more of a tendency to actually become a lifelong prisoner. Between housing, food, and also salaries for prison workers, that's the reason why there's so much money there. So if we actually took the money, put it into education, and actually had better programs, we would have less people in jail. We do not spend enough. Actually, out of the 50 states, I believe California is right around number 48 on per capita per student. Teacher salary varies from state to state. I know teachers that were teaching in Florida for the better part of 20 years, and I was making more money here on my 5th year than they had been there after 20 years. So it depends on what state you were in. Now, Rim of the World actually does have a lower teacher salary than its surrounding communities. So should they be making more? Yes. And also, if you look at it, even though we are educators and we only work 180 days, and yes, I'm using those air quotes, most of us have 6 to 10 years post-secondary education. So technically we have enough schooling equal to a doctor. And as we are going through our career, through generally the 30-35 years, we do go back to school, we go to trainings. Just like doctors, we're updating our pedagogy, we're updating our knowledge, we're updating how we are teaching. And should we be paid as much as doctors? Probably. If you take Finland, teachers actually are only 10% of the population, and they're the highest paid.
To recapitulate, we must place more emphasis on our public education system, not only for the benefit of school children, but also for the benefit of our country's economic welfare